Welcome back, you're watching NewsX. My name is Vineet. Well, the black box and the digital video recorder have been retrieved in the Boeing 787 Dreamliner crash. While investigation into CCTV footage and other black box recordings is underway, several conspiracy theories are also flying. These are the conspiracy theories doing the rounds. We're going to take them one by one. Theory 1, the crash coincides with PM Modi's visit to Canada for the G7 summit. Theory number 2, remote sabotage due to non-functioning AC and cabin lights, due to this being a high-tech aircraft. Theory number 3, fuel contamination, which could have shown the quantity to be normal. Theory number 4, well, Turkish tech responsible for maintenance of all Air India flights. Theory number 5, Boeing whistleblower John Barnett warned of major quality issues in the company's 787 aircraft. Theory number 6, intentional frequency jamming with the communications of the flight. Let's take them one by one with our experts who are joining us at this point in time. With us on the show to talk more about this is Mr. James Healy-Pratt, expert of international aviation. Mr. Pierre-Henri, aviation expert, also joins us on the show. Last but not the least, Mr. Sumit Peer, senior political commentator on the show as well. All right, Pierre, I'm going to begin with you. What do you think happened over here? You know, I read out 6 conspiracy theories. You're free to pick up one, whichever you think is closest, and assess what happened to this Dreamliner for a couple of decades since its inception, which is 18 years to be precise. The Dreamliner has been considered to be a foolproof, modern tech, impermeable aircraft. This is the first hull breach that has happened for this aircraft. What do you make of it?
So indeed, you have about 1,270 Dreamliners that have been constructed and flying, and you had no hull loss like this in 14 years, which makes it one of the safest, used to be one of the safest aircraft. So I think for the theory on the whistleblower, it truly shows that you have an aircraft that has a very good design, that is extremely safe. And even though you have an accident, you can easily say somebody blew the whistle years ago. Sadly, we know statistically accidents are going to come. Now, as pilots, as engineers, our goal is to make sure they arrive only once every, let's say, 2 or 3 million hours or so. But the point I want to make is, for the whistleblower theory, I'm not sure you can really relate it to that, because you've been seeing 14 years of impeccable flying safety record. And second theory I like to jump on is fuel contamination. What is important to understand with fuel contamination is the aircraft started its engine earlier, and the two sides, the two engines, use their own fuel tanks. And for the two sides to have at the exact same moment fuel contamination hitting the engines, creating loss of power, it's extremely unlikely. So usually what you see with fuel contamination is you might lose one engine, but losing both engines, if that's the case, is going to be extremely unlikely. So right now we cannot rule it out at 100%. We will have to wait about a month-ish and the preliminary report. But it's so unlikely that I'm not even sure in the last 20 years that caused a crash of a dual-engine aircraft. So I think those two theories are a bit far-fetched. And from the footage that we have, what we can tell is that they had weight to thrust issue for a reason we cannot say right now. Might be loss of power, might be partial loss of power, but what we know for certain is that 37 degrees is a temperature where you're going to lose some thrust on the engines, yet your maximum takeoff weight should be computed to make sure with one engine remaining, you can still climb if you put the gear. So what we can say from those images right now is that the aircraft was still controllable. They tried to pitch up toward the end, yet we don't know exactly what thrust was coming out of the engines. So it's almost normal nowadays that you have all those theories coming out, but it looks like it's a fully technical / aviation related issue on an aircraft that had an impeccable flight record until yesterday.
Pierre, what about frequency jamming? Is that something which can be done on a standalone basis? Frequency jamming, in colloquial terms and in modern warfare terms, is also referred to as a tactical weapon to bring down aircraft. Do you think that is something that could have also been used? You know, we are living in a world which is witnessing several wars. We just got out of a war with Pakistan just about a month ago. Is that a possibility that we can completely write off, Pierre?
I'm going to jump on my experience. I used to be an instructor on Rafale. I flew Rafale for the French Navy for years. We jam each other flying fighter aircraft. It's in the design, something we do. It doesn't make you fall out of the sky. The type of jamming you can have an impact on nowadays that's going to be annoying, I'm not saying dangerous, annoying for commercial aircraft, is mostly GPS related jamming, spoofing. And on a takeoff phase like that one, won't be an issue. Could be an issue if you come back in terrain with already some issues on your navigation system, and now you have GPS spoofing. That could add up and lead to maybe a bad decision, a bad navigation. But on takeoff like this, I would rule it as very, very, very unlikely, honestly. Very, very unlikely.
And Pierre, what about pilot error? The theory is that, he had about 3.5 kilometers of a runway to figure out if this aircraft was takeoff worthy. And that is something pilots can ascertain perhaps in the first 2,000 meters. Is that a theory that you think is palpable, is viable in this case, that the pilot could have stopped this aircraft on its tracks before trying to climb?
I truly trust the way pilots are selected and trained. Losing an engine on takeoff or during the takeoff roll is something we train on the simulator every 6 months. So it's really a drill that we know. And you see every month-ish an aircraft with an engine fire or an engine issue on takeoff, and usually doesn't lead to a crash. Why? Because we are fully trained on this drill. But what you need to understand is that indeed takeoff basically has two phases. First phase, until what we call V1, you're going to accelerate and you're going to decide if you go flying or not. If you lose an engine during this first initial acceleration, you're going to abort the takeoff and you're going to stop. Once you're past V1, you have so much energy, you won't be able to stop before the end of the runway. So you go fly. Because with one engine only, if you do the procedure correctly, it's going to work, even if it's 37 degrees. So we know they did a mayday on the radio. We don't know exactly when, but you can accelerate past V1, meaning you're committed to fly, and now you have an engine failure. So now you have to deal with it. Worst case scenario for a pilot is having a dual engine failure after V1. Yet it's extremely rare. When I'm saying extremely rare, I think I can't even think of an airline there that had a dual engine failure on takeoff in the first 3,000 meters. I think last time was Sully, but he was already at 600 meters. It was 2009 with a 320 in New York that ended up on the Hudson. So it's really something that is highly, highly, highly unlikely. And losing both engine on takeoff after V1 is going to lead to major issues. But saying it's pilot responsibility, honestly, right now is way too early because we weren't in the cockpit. We don't know exactly what happened and with what information they took their decisions. So we'll have to wait about 30 days for the preliminary report that's going to answer on the energy state of the aircraft, on the thrust of the engine. And even though everybody wants answers now, putting the blame on the pilot wouldn't be fair. And as a pilot myself, it's not something I'm going to go toward because we don't know yet.
Pierre, there's a lot being said about Boeing. There's been a lot said about Boeing as well. That they're playing with fire. They are outsourcing equipment which is not qualitative. And that is the reason, a number of countries with Boeing aircrafts are sitting on ticking time bombs. What do you have to say about that? A couple of their whistleblowers have been neutralized as well.
What I can say, I got trained in 2017 on the MAX before all the accidents. I still fly the MAX as passenger with my kids for a very simple reason. The reason is you have about 60% of the fleet worldwide that is equipped with Boeing, and you have 100,000 to 150,000 flights a day worldwide that doesn't lead in crash. So there is some Boeing bashing, we can say, going on in the medias. People are afraid of Boeing, but Airbus had its crashes in the 90s, in the 2000s as well. And I think it's more like a point of focus of personnel. But again, you have 60%-ish of the fleet that fly Boeing. So out of the number of flights daily, it's normal to have sometimes engine failures, to have sometimes landing gears that do not come down, stuff like that. But you shouldn't make the mistake of thinking it's due to Boeing, when sometimes it's due to the maintenance, or it's due to, we talked about it earlier, sometimes human factor, pilot error. So because it's a Boeing doesn't mean Boeing is the root cause of the accident. And the statistic, again, I like to emphasize, is the Dreamliner had been flying for 14 years without a single crash. And I'm pretty sure a lot of car manufacturer or boat manufacturer would like to be able to have such a safety statistic to bring up.
Pierre, one last question before we let you go. I'm going to bring in James after that, and then Sumit. You said that the probable cause, outside of any investigation or investigative conclusions, could be that the loss of power or partial loss of power. Do you think why do you think something like this could happen? Could this happen because of some misadventure by the ground staff? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, so partial loss of power could come for a lot of reasons. One could be something that gets ingested in the aircraft. Another one would be an issue with a particular engine. What we see on the footage is some sort of dust as they take off. So maybe that means they went past the end of the runway or just really at the end of the runway. Other theories, like there was some smoke coming from the engines, we can't tell for sure right now. So you could have another issue, which is taking off without enough airspeed. So if you end up taking off without enough airspeed, it's either because your power wasn't high enough, or, and that's an important or because you put in the system information that weren't the good one. Every single time you take off, you're going to tell your system what your weight is, what the temperature is, and it's going to come up with what we call a flex takeoff, a use of your engines that is going to be perfectly computed for the length of the runway, your weight, the pressure, and the temperature. And the reason why we do flex takeoff is to minimize the pressure on the engines, because it's going to go out, so it's going to have a lot of pressure on the engine, minimize noise, minimize fuel consumption as well. And as a crew, if you're taking off on flex and you realize something isn't going as planned, you should go full power to use all the thrust available. So that's really something we're going to be looking for. With what percentage of the thrust did they initiate the takeoff? Did they change it during the takeoff? Did they change it after takeoff? And that's going to be absolutely key. Because let's say they put wrong inputs in the computer, or wrong weight or wrong temperature, and the aircraft doesn't accelerate as fast as it should. You either reject if you know it before V1, or when you discover it, you go full power to make sure you have enough energy. And if you do not, you can end up underpowered at a speed where you cannot really fly the aircraft anymore. And when the aircraft tends to decelerate, the entire fuselage is going to start acting as an air brake. So you have like a power curve. When you go too slow, the only way is down. And that's what we see at the end of the flight. So the question is, why was they so slow? And chances are it's going to be power/configuration related, or both.
Pierre, really appreciate you taking out the time and speaking to us. And thank you so much for that clarity. Really, really, really means a lot. All right, let me bring in Mr. James Healy-Pratt into this conversation as well. James, you've heard what Pierre had to say. They slowed down, and that is the reason why they came down and this crash occurred. What is your theory of what happened here?
Well, I think we'd all agree that we're going to wait for the black boxes to be downloaded and decoded, because I've been investigating airline crashes for over 30 years, and the black boxes will provide us with 90 to 95% of the answers. And that's, of course, what the families will want to know. what is obvious is that the wings were generating lift. The 787 did take off, and then there was insufficient thrust and the gear was down. The gear, the undercarriage, should have been retracted pretty much after rotation at the end of the threshold of the runway. It wasn't. So that could either point to a problem in the cockpit with the pilots, but it could also point to a problem with the aircraft and the aircraft systems. And that's why the black box data, both the cockpit voice recorder and the flight data recorder, are essential evidence for the investigators and, of course, the families.
James, why do you think it was, not evident to the pilots that there was a potential problem lying ahead? What must they have missed in order for this to happen?
Well, I'll tell you in about 30 days when the black box cockpit voice recorder is released. But they obviously considered the aircraft was airworthy to take off, and problems only emerged once we know that one of the crew made a mayday call. It's yet to be confirmed if the mayday call said anything about loss of thrust. There's been lots of rumour and speculation, but that has not been corroborated yet. So it looks like the crew were faced with an emergency situation and they had very few options. And of course, the reasons for that emergency situation will be revealed by the evidence of the black box. But I come back that the undercarriage was down, the gear was down, it should have been retracted. Now, I'm only a helicopter pilot, I'm not a 787 pilot, but I know, we all know enough about aviation that gear should have been retracted. So that could be a key factor in pointing to a potential systems failure. And the other thing that I've been looking at in the Indian media today, there are rumours that the Indian government may decide to ground the Dreamliner. If they do that, they'll do that because they suspect there is a safety issue with the Dreamliner. And Boeing don't want that. That is terrible news for Boeing. So we'll watch that very closely in relation to what air safety decisions the Indian government and the regulators in India do as for the Dreamliner.
James, there have been problems with Boeing, right? There have been congressional hearings. The CEO of Boeing has appeared before it and has been grilled incessantly by American lawmakers. Do you think this crash, in a way, also underlines that problem, that conspiracy, that theory of Boeing's being overrated in some way or the other?
Well, again, look, I'll tell you in 30 days' time after the black boxes have revealed their secrets, but it's no secret that Boeing have had a terrible time over the last 7 or 8 years. I was involved in the Lion Air and the Ethiopian Airlines Boeing MAX accidents, and it took 2 airliner disasters for the 737 MAX to be grounded. So completely needless loss of life. I think we need to look very closely at what their responsibility to the Indian travelling public is. But all we do have is the prior evidence that Boeing did not behave properly in relation to the first MAX accident, and it took the second mass disaster with Ethiopian for things to actually get done. But needless lives were lost. One prays that there will not be another Dreamliner accident anytime soon. But again, we come back to the black boxes and what action the Indian government may make in relation to grounding the Dreamliner.
James, one bit of information, the same aircraft that same morning had come in from Delhi to Ahmedabad, where there are a number of videos that were made of the air conditioning not working, the entertainment system not working. Is that a sign to you in any which way?
Look, it may or it may not be relevant. All those ancillary systems are not core to the airworthiness of the aircraft, and there's something called a minimum equipment list. And if the ICE is not operating properly, that's not going to affect the actual operation and the airworthiness of the aircraft itself. So at the moment, we can't say whether that is material and significant or not. I get back to that theme of the black boxes. They will have at least 90% of the evidence.
All right, James, appreciate you taking out the time and speaking with us. Thank you so much for joining us. It really means a lot. All right, let me bring in Sumit Peer into this conversation as well at this point in time. But before that, the first conspiracy theory is that the crash coincides with PM Modi's visit to Canada for the G7 summit. Gurpad Pannu and the Khalistanis have issued repeated threats to Air India in the past as well, and they're viral on social media. These elements have earlier blown up the Kanishka aircraft Air India Flight 182. Although the videos show no evidence of any blast, this is still a conspiracy theory. Sumit, we know what Pannu has been saying. We know he specifically mentioned Air India. He's not mentioned any Indian aircraft. Do you think that this could be a remote possibility that this particular terrorist, I'm going to call him terrorist, and I will urge everyone to call him a terrorist as well, has possibly done some conspiracy or had some sort of an influence and made this happen? Your thoughts?
Vinny, thank you for having me on your show. It's a very tragic event, and my heartfelt condolences to all. Om Shanti. Coming to your question in particular, Vinny, if I can be very candid and direct, there are a couple of reasons which I have in mind. I'm going to discuss them with you. Because today, I'm not an aviation expert, I cannot, but what I can definitely tell, we cannot rule out sabotage as a possibility. That, as an Indian, as a patriotic Indian, I'll stretch my neck out and say we cannot rule out sabotage. Why? What are the reasons? First reason, the plane comes from Delhi, lands in Ahmedabad, is in perfect condition, no problems. Secondly, when it takes off from Ahmedabad, something very strange happens. Look, when the plane takes off, they say it's a mayday. When the ATC starts to reach them, immediately the next second, there is nothing. The plane crashes precisely after a minute or 1.5 minutes after that. It starts rolling high, starts drifting to the left, and it crashes. The landing gear of the plane is open. Why does it happen? Today, we are talking of a communications blackout, a complete electronics shut, which is caused by a spike or which is caused by some electromagnetic flux even, which can completely kill all the systems at one go. So usually electromagnetic flux is capable of doing that. Third thing is that, there's a possibility of a bird hit, which is a remote possibility, but we can't rule that out. Fourth thing is there's a Turkish company which is doing the maintenance of the aircrafts. So we are knowing our problems with the Turkey, knowing how we have dismantled their tech, which Erdogan used to call as the Islami tech. Now that Islami tech starts dismantled, so there are reasons of coming back. Fifth reason is that, when it landed from Delhi to Ahmedabad, it was fine. What happened in Ahmedabad? How did it become a sting duck in a way? How did it crash? And why didn't the pilots respond back? One more angle to it is that, if you look at it from a Pakistani perspective, I'll take you to 1965. In 1965, Pakistanis sent Ghazi and 8 ships to attack, where? Gujarat. Where in Gujarat? Dwarka. They wanted to dismantle all the Air Force radars and wanted to send a message. They had Ghazi waiting, thinking that Indian Air Force will not retaliate, Indian Navy will come after them and the Ghazi will hunt them out. But Indian Navy did not follow the bait. And though they attacked Somnath, they attacked Dwarka. And why Dwarka was chosen? Dwarka was chosen because Dwarka is the place where Somnathji is. And they wanted to settle a score. Because what Muhammad Ghazni could not do 17 times, they wanted to come and do it even in independent India. That's why they chose Dwarka. A lot of their ships came in. They bombarded the places. Some of our radars got destroyed, but a lot of their ammunition did not go off. It is documented history. Then in 71, we launched Python, and I forget the name of the other operation where we dismantled or their Never Armada in Karachi, and we burned down complete Karachi as a response to that. So from 65, they have this problem with Gujarat. They have this problem to settle the score with Gujarat. And where does Prime Minister Modi come from? Where does Amit Shah come from? Gujarat. So, कहते हैं ना घर में घुस के मारना है. So if you look at it, there's a possibility that is why Gujarat or Ahmedabad could have been chosen. Second thing, look at 9/11. Which planes were chosen? The planes which are going from East Coast to West Coast. Again, a long range flight. 53,000 liters of fuel, completely full. Point number 4. There were a lot of foreigners in it. 1/3 of your passengers were foreigners. More foreigners, more international impact, more news value. Right? So they didn't choose a domestic flight, they chose an international flight because of the fuel, because of a lot of foreigners in it. So if you kind of add all these things up, and if you look at the mentality of Pakistan, if you look at how Turkey is hurt, how Pakistan is hurt, they will try to come back to us in some way or the other after the humiliation they've got in Operation Sindoor. And let me take you to another aspect. We need your sister publication, Sunday Guardian. Before Pahalgam attack, they said that after 9 days there was an attack which is possible to happen. People ignored it. There was another article in your sister publication, Sunday Guardian, by Tehreek-e-Taliban spokesperson. He said 2 attacks will happen in India after Sindoor. One, a mass transport will be targeted. What is this? This is a mass transport. Second, a possible skirmish which will be orchestrated by ISI with India and China. and that can flare up India-China tensions at LAC. That is yet to happen. Remember, Afghan forces caught an Afghani with a fake passport, which was to be used in this incident. And over and above that, 9th June, 3 दिन पहले 9th June 2025, ex-rogue and ex-CIA operative Sarah Adams tweets, the worst attack on India is yet to come from Afghanistan, and then she writes all the 4-letter words and all. Go and do whatever you want to do that, and F you, whatever, the 4-letter word yourself. There's a tweet of Sarah Adams warning this. Now join the dots. What the Tehreek-e-Taliban spokesperson claimed, what your Sunday Guardian said was already published, your sister publication. Now what Sarah Adams has tweeted on 9th of June, warning of this kind of attack. And then we have Gurman Pannu, who's again warning of this. Pakistan has a score to settle. Turkey has a score to settle, and it is Gujarat. It is Prime Minister Modi's home turf, and unfortunately, the maximum people whom we have lost are Gujaratis. So, if you add everything together, what the experts were saying, the aviation experts, is the effect. But if you look at the cause of the things, go back and look at the cause. What you see is the effect, raw stock power and all. But there is something called ACARS. ACARS is a system within the aircraft which you can even remotely use to shut the engines. There are options in ACARS where the engines can be even shut remotely. So there are what look to us is the effect. Yeah, losing power, thrust, drifting, and gone. But what caused it? What could have been the possible reasons which caused it? I have put around 11, 12 reasons in a very sequential, logical manner for your consideration and for the consideration of viewers, and especially this tweet of Sarah Adams, your sister publication's article, then Pannu, then Turkey, then Asif Munir, then they're getting Islamic tech getting shattered, Turkish company in the business of maintaining aircrafts. So we can't rule out this. I'm not saying this happened, Vineet, but when I look at these 12 points and what happened in 65, what happened in 71, even in 65, there was a Anka Kata tha Somnath temple. They wanted to
hold on to that thought. We have to keep a track on time as well. Well, the passenger who flew on the same Air India aircraft just 2 hours before it crashed near Ahmedabad airport has claimed that the plane was experiencing technical issues during its earlier journey from Delhi. One theory also rules out that remote sabotage due to non-functioning air conditioners and cabin lights can also lead to failure of a high-tech aircraft like Boeing 787. Wing Commander S. Sudhakaran, former Indian Air Force officer, is also with us on the program. Wing Commander Sudhakaran, what does your theory tell you here? What really transpired?
See, let me tell you, I don't want to, these all, conspiracy theories are a sham. Let's not get into it.
No, I didn't say conspiracy theory. I said theory.
No, that's what I'm saying. There is no conspiracy theory here. It looks, there are very less conspiracy theories, and I will explain to you one by one. Right? So the first point is there is no Turkish angle here. The Air India flight maintenance of Dreamliner is maintained by an in-house agency that is called as the, what do you say, I think AESL or something like that, right? So that is the one that manages the maintenance. So there is absolutely no Turkish angle to it. So let's keep that by this side. It is called as Air India Engineering Services, AIESL. The second point is, why did the ATC not be able to communicate with the pilot? Is because it operates on what is called as the VHF frequency, which is around 118 megahertz. It is a line of sight communication. Please understand, the flight was at 642 feet. It came down in roughly around 10 to 15 seconds. So the pilot couldn't opt for other means, which is HF and SATCOM, because there was hardly any time left. His whole aim was to keep the flight afloat, and therefore there is no chance that he would have switched on to an alternate communication system, which is why the ATC was not able to communicate. That is number two. The number three angle is about this flight system and all. It is a nonsense. See, I've been an Air India flyer. I fly Air India almost 3 times in a month, right? And that I've been doing for the last 15 years consecutively. And I'm telling you that Air India's this entertainment system, the TV, it hardly works these days, because even when Tata took over, it started working, but then it has completely stopped working. Probably it is because it is not economical for them to ensure the serviceability of this, and that's why, in fact, I traveled as late as last week. It didn't work. Lights and air conditioner, sometimes it goes on and off. That doesn't have a direct impact on the airworthiness of the aircraft per se. Please understand that. The fourth point is what happened. It came absolutely well from Delhi, and then what happened in those 30 seconds. This is where it is. See, actually, the research that I have been doing for the last couple of days, because there are a lot of questions that have been asked over the TV channels by various anchors. It has now come. There are two broad reasons, and now the other reason seems to be more of a candidate for explaining this accident is the bird hit theory. Reason is Ahmedabad is one of the notorious airfields which has got a significant problem with the kind of migratory birds, and that too small birds. It's not the big birds. And small birds in flocks, because I've been given to understand there is a bird sanctuary 30 kilometers away from the airport. And the second thing is, because of the large number of the meat establishment, the butcheries and all, there is a lot of wastages that are thrown all around, and because of this, the bird activity increases. In fact, in Bangalore, where I stayed during the Aero India, the entire meat shops were closed for almost 2 weeks when Aero India was happening. So this adds up. The most important thing is, see, if you actually look at the series of events, if I have to explain, the aircraft was, it cleared all the pre-flight checks. That's when the pilot decided, yes, it's good to go for a takeoff. Now, it had reached 160 knots. And one more thing is, the plane was at its peak MTO, which means the maximum takeoff weight. The plane had around 1.25 lakh liters of fuel in it, 242 passengers, their cargo. It all added up, and then it was roughly more than 90% of the MTO allowable, but probably within limits. Now, what happens here is, when the flight had taken off, till around the 20th second, the trajectory probably was right. 21st second was when the mayday was given, which means the pilot has observed something that has happened. Now, if anything catastrophic to happen within 10 seconds, the systems, Dreamliner is a far more safe aircraft. This is the first accident that has happened, which means it has got enough redundancy. It has got a lot of resiliency built in its system. There are multiple safeguards that are there to, for an aircraft to fall in 10 seconds, there has to be something serious that has to happen. So either it is an explosion that is within, or there is a hit that has happened. Now, considering that there are a lot of birds that are seen, and in fact, yesterday I was on air when one of the chief pilots who have flown multiple times out of Ahmedabad explained to me that, he has on many occasions encountered these birds. And in fact, when I pulled out, there are enough records. In fact, there is a 2019 article of Times of India which says that Ahmedabad has been warned by DGCA multiple times, and Ahmedabad airport has initiated multiple countermeasures to ensure that these birds are, scared away. But all said and done, having seen the airfield from close quarters, it is very easy said than done, because birds you just simply can't avoid. It just, even if it is there, and you hope like hell, nothing happens. And probably Ahmedabad had something like almost one bird hit per week, at some point of time. So, having seen this, probably this could be a plausible theory to explain why both the engines failed at the same time. Because if it was a fuel line starving, probably one engine is understood. Fuel contamination, both engines at the same time at such short notice, because it has just come from Delhi. So it is not possible that the contamination happened all of a sudden in Ahmedabad, considering that there would have been significant fuel left from the Delhi trip. So, the bird hit appears to be a much more plausible theory, wherein both the engines, what has happened to me is at the 21st second when this mayday call was given, both the engines lost thrust, because of which the flight was not getting sufficient lift, because of which the pilot made it nose up, the tail got down, and it went into a stall kind of a situation. This is why the tail went and struck the building first, and the tail got dislodged from the aircraft and got shoved into that building. And then subsequently the front fuselage went and banged, and then that's where they
Okay, hold on to that thought. In fact, one possible cause that comes to our mind, though this is just a very preliminary assumption, is fuel contamination, which Wing Commander Sudhakaran just mentioned, which could fall under sabotage. If the fuel added was contaminated with water or other substances, the quantity might appear normal, but the contamination could prevent proper combustion. Experts have cited fuel contamination as one of the reasons behind the engine failure. Well, heavy maintenance work of some of the airline's wide-body B777s and B787s are done by Turkey-based Turkish Technique. And after an Air India flight crashed on the afternoon of 12th of June, there were claims that a Turkish company was responsible for maintaining the aircraft that went down in Ahmedabad. Wing Commander, well, fuel contamination and of course the Turkish angle is for us to imagine and probe as well.
Contamination, again, it is not that easy to mix a fuel with water and things like that, because the browsers are not filled for specific aircrafts, and there is a certain process that is involved. These are highly security cleared environment, right? You will it is not that I put 1 liter of water into this 1,25,000 and then that. See, these air engines, these are next generation air engines. They are very, very resilient. So contamination has to reach a certain point, and there are measures and guards that are put in place, and then there are filters. Even the fuels have still filters which actually filter before it actually goes into the combustion chamber. So to tell that this has happened, in fact, the fuel contamination, if it were to be so prominent, it could have happened at some, it wouldn't happen at the 31st second. Either it would have happened immediately when the ground runs are given, because mind you, the engines are on for more than 15 minutes, right? All the checks are done 15, 20, 30 minutes. So if the contamination would have been as a theory, then the engines would have shown it up in the ground test itself, because it would have added up there. Now, there is no way that it exactly has happened at the 31st second or the 36th second wherein, it has led to this kind of a stall. And please understand, it is also taxied, by the time it is aligned, and then it has traversed almost 11,500 feet. Because of the maximum takeoff weight, the pilot has pushed the aircraft almost to the edge of the runway and used the complete runway length to be able to do that takeoff. So, that is not very, very, though the FDR will tell what has actually happened, but the fuel contamination again doesn't look like a primary candidate. And as I already told you, there is no Turkish angle. This aircraft is not maintained. It is maintained by the in-house maintenance agencies. So we can keep spinning conspiracy theories. See, we must be responsible as people, to the public, because if we spread misinformation, it will create a lot of unrest, and we have to be greatly responsible to say what we are saying. See, while I am speculating still that the bird head will be the most plausible theory, it is based on a lot of facts. And why I'm sticking my neck out, ideally as an air warrior, I'm not supposed to do this. I am supposed to wait for the FDR report. It will take 30 days. But just to put these conspiracy theories in place, I am trying to, create, and in fact, yesterday I was suspecting the lithium-ion battery theory to a large extent. I did a lot of research around that. But then it doesn't make the engine fail within 15 seconds. It takes a more, the time period has to be slightly more. And also the fact, I also, tried to see, because the temperatures in Delhi was around 46 degrees. Yesterday was unusually a very hot day. So what happens is, when the heat of the ambient temperature, ambient atmosphere, it leads to what is called as a thermal runaway in a lithium-ion battery. And at the takeoff stage, when the battery has to discharge maximum power, it is under a lot of stress. That could, heat up the battery to more than 600 degrees Celsius. That was a very, very plausible reason for me to look at.
All right, just hold on to that. We'll talk about this. Well, Boeing whistleblower John Barnett had warned of major quality issues in the company's 787 aircraft. Boeing whistleblowers' alarming claims resurfaced after Air India crash happened, and John Barnett was a former quality manager who flagged safety lapses in the Boeing Dreamliner program before his mysterious death last year. All right, joining us at this point in time is also Wing Commander Bharat Bhushan, former Indian Air Force officer. So how important is this qualitative lapse that Barnett spoke about? But if you look at the flip side of it, the Dreamliner has had no hull breach ever since its inception. Where does this put this precarious situation at?
Now that the black box has been recovered, I think it will be good for us all to wait for a little while to see what the black box reveals, because it is now the entire data that will be there, and I'm sure the government will look at various different angles which we cannot speculate and cause alarm in the public. So right now, my personal take is that there is some error or something that has happened somewhere down the line. The Dreamliner has not been without any faults as such, because the whistleblowers, as I had mentioned in the earlier discussion, they have been whistleblowers who said that the Boeing was rushing to complete planes and deliver, and there is possibility somewhere there is quality control problem there, or anywhere down the line. Even possibility is there that the bird hit could have hit one engine, and it could have triggered under stress a different reaction by the crew, though the crew is very well experienced. So as of now, we are all been speculating, and I think as of now, the weather was good, so there's no doubt about that part. The rest of it, I think the black box will probably give us the answers in maybe a shorter while than that, because it recovered in good condition. And suppose everybody, the Boeing, the Americans and the British and our own experts are going to look at it and come out with what has happened actually.
All right, radio frequency jamming refers to the intentional disruption or interference of wireless communication signals by broadcasting signals that overpower the target communication frequencies. These jamming signals cause disruptions in data transfer, making communication between devices difficult or impossible. Intentional frequency jamming with the communications of the flight involves disrupting radio signals, which poses a significant threat to aircraft navigation and communication is also another theory. Wing Commander Sudhakaran, your thoughts on frequency jamming? Is that something that could have been applied here?
If they made a call, right? So that has happened. Now the ATC couldn't call back. I told you it is a VHF 118 megahertz frequency. That is a line of sight. At 642 feet, when you are almost, falling like a free stone in a stalled aircraft within 10 seconds, there is no way that you can, get into all these things. And even jamming the radio frequency, you will jam the communication. Jamming the communication doesn't impact the avionics of the aircraft. So these are all, non-scientific, non-technical. I think I would leave it at that. There is absolutely no chance of any, communication jamming leading to this crash.
Okay, Mahesh Sharma, BJP MP and former Civil Aviation Minister, is also joining us on the broadcast to talk about this. Mr. Sharma, appreciate you taking out the time and speaking with us. So, how do you see the Ahmedabad crash? What is your initial reaction to what's happened here?
देखिए, दुर्घटना बहुत दर्दनाक है और जैसा कि कहा है कि पिछले 30-35 वर्षों में एक गंभीर दुर्घटना हुई है सिविल एविएशन की हिस्ट्री में। हवाई जहाज की यात्रा को अगर हम बाकी सब जगहों के एक्सीडेंट में देखें, कार एक्सीडेंट में और अन्य एक्सीडेंट में, सबसे कम माना गया है कि इससे मृत्यु लॉस बहुत कम होता है, सबसे कम होता है और लगभग सुरक्षित भी है। हालांकि चिंता ये है कि अगर आसमान में ऐसी घटना हुई तो बचने की उम्मीद किसी की नहीं होती, ये संभावना है। वही इस बार भी हुआ। यह हवाई जहाज़ जिस ड्रीम लाइनर बोइंग 787 ड्रीम लाइनर श्रेणी का है, ये हमारी सरकार ने, उस वक्त की सरकार ने नए जहाज़ खरीदे थे और ये सोचते हुए कि ये उस वक्त की सबसे बेस्ट टेक्नोलॉजी के जहाज़ थे। कोई ऐसा फेलियर भी इनमें नहीं हुआ और मैं समझता हूँ कि मैं जब सिविल एविएशन में राज्य मंत्री था तब भी इस विषय पर चर्चा हुई कि ये हमारे अच्छी जहाज़ हैं, नए जहाज़ हैं उस वक़्त के। जो घटना हुई है इसके कारणों की जांच पर सबकी चिंता है, सबकी नज़र है। माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने, माननीय गृह मंत्री जी ने जिस तरह से मानव क्षति हुई है उस पर अपना दर्द जताया है, अपनी भावनाएं जताई हैं और तुरंत 3 घंटे के अंदर ही गृह मंत्री जी वहाँ पहुँच गए। आज सवेरे सवेरे माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी वहाँ पहुँच गए, घायलों से मिले हैं, अधिकारियों से मिले हैं, हमारे नागरिक उड्डयन मंत्री वहाँ पहुँचे, सिविल एविएशन के अधिकारियों को आदेशित किया है कि इसकी जांच गंभीरता से करें, क्योंकि हमारे देश के जहाँ 160 यात्री हैं वहीं विदेशों को भी, ब्रिटेन और कनाडा और पुर्तगाल के भी यात्री इसमें हैं। विदेशी एजेंसियां भी जानना चाहेंगी और बोइंग कंपनी भी ये जानना चाहेगी कि आखिरकार ये दुर्घटना क्यों हुई, क्या इसके कारण रहे होंगे। अभी हमारा ध्यान इस बात पर होना चाहिए कि जो घायल हैं उनको प्रॉपर इलाज मिले। टाटा सन्स जिन्होंने एयर इंडिया को अभी टेक ओवर किया था और एक रेप्यूटेड कंपनी है, भारत सरकार की एक गर्व वाली कंपनी है, उन्होंने भी अपनी सामाजिक जिम्मेदारी को निभाया है। जांच में वो भी लोग चाहेंगे कि इसकी जांच हो। कोई भी इस हादसे को होना भी नहीं चाहता था, देखना भी नहीं चाहता था, सुनना भी नहीं चाहता था, लेकिन हादसा है, कष्टदायक है, पीड़ादायक है। जिन्होंने अपने परिजनों को खोया है उनके साथ हमारी सांत्वनाएं साथ हैं, पूरे देश की सांत्वनाएं उनके साथ हैं और माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी और हमारी पूरी सरकार इस विषय पर चिंतित।
सर, इस हादसे में पूर्व मुख्यमंत्री रूपानी जी का भी निधन हुआ, साथ ही साथ प्रधानमंत्री मोदी ने भी उन परिवारों से मिला जिनके किन किन इस ट्रेजेडी में जिनकी मृत्यु हुई है। आप इन फैमिलीज़ को, इन परिवारों को क्या संदेश देना चाहेंगे?
देखिए, प्रधानमंत्री जी ने या गृह मंत्री जी और हमारी इस पूरी सरकार भी इस विषय में हमेशा बहुत संवेदनशील रही है। किसी भी विषय पर जहाँ भी पूरे देश में ऐसी कोई घटना रही हो, हमेशा संजीदगी से उन्होंने, कई बार तो पूरी रात, कभी एक रेल दुर्घटना हुई थी उसमें पूरी रात वो समाचार लेते रहे, चाहे वो किसी और घटना हुई हो उस पर वो पूरी संजीदगी से अपनी जिम्मेदारी को निभाते हैं, अपनी भावनाओं को व्यक्त भी करते हैं, ज़रूरत पड़ती है तो मौके पर भी पहुंचते हैं। ये हमारी सरकार का काम करने का तरीका, विशेष तौर पर हमारे प्रधानमंत्री जी का ये तरीका है कि वो स्वयं अपने पूरे सिस्टम को अलर्ट कर कमांड सेंटर में बैठ जाते हैं और जब तक उस पूरी समस्या का समाधान ना हो जाए, उसका जो भी ज़रूरत है वो पूरी ना हो जाए, चाहे कोई भूकंप हो, चाहे रेल दुर्घटना हो, चाहे इस तरह का वायु दुर्घटना हो, वो अपनी उस जिम्मेदारी को बहुत संजीदगी से निभाते हैं।
शर्मा जी, बोइंग को लेकर, ड्रीम लाइनर को लेकर बहुत ही कंस्पिरेसी थ्योरीज फ्लोट कर रही हैं। मेंटेनेंस को लेकर भी काफ़ी गंभीरता और संदिग्धता जताई जा रही है। आप क्या कहना चाहेंगे?
देखिए, ये ड्रीम लाइनर कैटेगरी जो है, ये ड्रीम लाइनर कैटेगरी बहुत पुराना जहाज नहीं है, ये नई का जहाज था। हमारे पिछले समय में ही ये लिया गया था, तो मैं इसे नहीं मानूंगा कि ये बहुत पुराना जहाज उड़ाया जा रहा है। अब इसकी कमांड टाटा सन्स ने ली है। टाटा सन्स एक बहुत ही प्रतिष्ठित कंपनी है, वो कोई भी ऐसा रिस्क किसी भी जहाज़ से नहीं लेना चाहेगी और देश भी नहीं लेना चाहेगा ऐसे किसी भी जहाज़ से। और ये जहाज़ करीबन पूरे देश, वर्ल्ड का चक्कर काटकर पेरिस से लौट कर आया है, दिल्ली से अहमदाबाद तक गया है। तो आखिरकार ऐसे कौन से कारण थे जिसमें बहुत सारे कारण, किसी पक्षी से टकराना, दोनों इंजन एक साथ फेल होना, ये भी एक चिंता का विषय। दोनों पायलट थे, जो प्रिकॉशन ली जा सकती थी। एक पायलट तो बहुत ही सुलझे हुए पायलट थे, दूसरे जो उनके को पायलट होते हैं वह भी लगभग 1200-1500 घंटे की फ्लाइंग के अनुभव वाले पायलट थे। तो मैं इसे ईश्वरीय कारण तो मानूंगा ही, लेकिन और कोई तकनीकी कारण क्या है वो जब जांच के बाद जब आएंगे, जब ब्लैक बॉक्स मिलेगा, अन्य चीज़ों पर सारी एजेंसियां सारी चीज़ों पर ध्यान देंगे, उसके बाद ही कुछ पता चल पाए।
सर, आपके आंकलन, आपके मुताबिक इस दुर्घटना की वजह क्या हो सकती है? क्योंकि ये एक बहुत ही असामान्य घटना है, जैसा आपने खुद कहा। आपको क्या लगता है क्या वजह हो सकती है?
देखिए, जहाँ तक कुल मात्र रनवे से 625 फीट की हाइट अचीव करने में 330-35 किलोमीटर की स्पीड से इट टेक्स लेस देन ए मिनट। तो लेस देन ए मिनट के अंदर जब वो वहाँ पहुँच गया तो इसका मतलब पायलट का कंट्रोल जहाज पे से हो चुका और उसने अपनी डिस्ट्रेस कॉल एयर ट्रैफिक कंट्रोल को दे दी थी। लेकिन उस समय में उनके संदेश देने और ट्रैफिक कंट्रोल से संदेश मिलने में समय इतना कम था कि कुछ भी सोच पाना और कुछ भी करना संभव नहीं था। और इसलिए कहीं नियरेस्ट प्लेन में जो जगह थी वो मात्र 1-1.5 किलोमीटर थी, मात्र 1-1.5 किलोमीटर में ही उस जहाज़ को हाइट नहीं अचीव कर पाया और वो नीचे की तरफ झुकता हुआ चला गया। और आखिर एक बिल्डिंग से, जिसमें भी दर्द की बात, एक मेडिकल चिकित्सा के छात्र और डॉक्टर्स थे, वो भी है उस दर्द की घटना में और दर्द उस घटना ने भी जोड़ दिया।
शर्मा जी, आपको क्या लगता है एयर ट्रैफिक को लेकर और एयर ट्रैफिक की जो एक फ्रीक्वेंसी है उसमें फ़र्क आने वाला है, ट्रैवलर सेंटिमेंट में फ़र्क आने वाला है इसके बाद?
देखिए, ट्रैफिक बढ़ना को हम नकारात्मक नहीं ले सकते। ट्रैफिक बढ़ना इज़ ए साइन ऑफ ग्रोथ, इज़ ए साइन ऑफ इम्प्रूवमेंट, इट इज़ साइन ऑफ कि देश आगे बढ़ रहा है। 70 हवाई अड्डों से हमने 160 हवाई अड्डे किए हैं और ये कोई हवाई अड्डे की या ट्रैफिक बढ़ने की या संख्या बढ़ने का इससे कोई लेना देना नहीं है। ये दुर्घटना है। दुर्घटना किसी एक जहाज़ में भी हो सकती थी और 70 के 160 हवाई अड्डे बन गए। या हमारा एयर ट्रैफिक बढ़ा है तो हम बड़े गर्व से कहते हैं कि हमारा एयर ट्रैफिक कितना बढ़ा है। आज देश की आर्थिक व्यवस्था बढ़ी है, लोग हवाई जहाज़ में सफ़र करने वालों की संख्या बढ़ी है। प्रधानमंत्री जी की सोच है कि हवाई चप्पल पहनने वाला, उड़ान के योगदान के माध्यम से हवाई चप्पल पहनने वाला हवाई जहाज़ में उड़े। तो ये हम सबके लिए गर्व और गौरव की बात है, लेकिन हादसा कष्टदायक है।
सर, आपको क्या लगता है कि जिस तरीके से अब ये हादसा हुआ है, आप एविएशन मिनिस्टर रह चुके हैं, इन कंपनीज को लेकर, एयर इंडिया को लेकर आप क्या कहना चाहेंगे?
देखिए, कोई भी कंपनी अपने जहाज के साथ, अपने पायलट के साथ, अपने यात्रियों के साथ ऐसी चूक नहीं करना चाहेगी। फिर हमारा DGCA, हमारा एक इतना सशक्त हमारा संगठन है, वो हर प्लेन को क्लियरेंस देता है, उसकी फिटनेस क्लियरेंस होती है, पायलट की फिटनेस क्लियरेंस होती है, पायलट की अल्कोहल की या अन्य कोई ऐसी स्थिति, डिप्रेशन, डिजीज़ की, उन सब की जांच होती है। उसके बाद कड़ी का बाद जहाज़ को भी और जहाज़ उड़ाने वालों को भी और जहाज़ की कंपनी वालों को भी, तीनों की फिटनेस के बाद कोई जहाज़, हवाई जहाज़ उड़ता है।
शर्मा जी, आपको लगता है कि ये हादसा किसी न किसी तरीके से रोका जा सकता था, इन सारे लोगों की जान बचाई जा सकती थी?
देखिए, रोकी जानी चाहिए, रोकने के प्रयास होने चाहिए और मैं समझता हूँ ईश्वर करे ये आखिरी दुर्घटना हो, लेकिन दुर्घटना दुर्घटना है और इसके बारे में ये हम कहना कि कभी आगे 100% ऐसी दुर्घटना नहीं होगी। लेकिन फिर भी सिविल एविएशन के माध्यम से हवाई यात्रा सबसे सुरक्षित समझी जाती है। इसी हवाई यात्रा से बिजनेसमैन भी, पॉलिटिशियंस भी, देशों के शासनाध्यक्ष भी, राष्ट्रपति, प्रधानमंत्री भी इन्हीं हवाई जहाज़ों से उड़ते हैं, इसी हवाई यात्रा का उपयोग करते हैं और फिर दुर्घटना तो किसी में भी कहीं भी हो सकती है।
सर, हमसे बातचीत करने के लिए, समय निकालने के लिए आपका बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया।